Welcome to the What Really Happened radio show. Because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, March 9th, 2016, middle of the week. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about, get through the talking points today. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645, 877-300-7645. Tom is sitting in our control room, his hand hovering over the telephone, ready to swoop on down and put you on the air with your comments and questions here. Well, as you know, we had primaries and caucuses in 4 states. And there's a very interesting object lesson to talk about. First of all, Trump won Michigan, Mississippi, and Hawaii. Cruz got Idaho. There was a major upset on the Democratic side up in Michigan. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit. But remember yesterday I made this comment that Fox News was running supposed exit polls in some of these states before the polls had closed. And I thought there was supposed to be a rule that says you can't do that. And they were saying, oh, Trump is just losing in Michigan. Oh, there's no reason for you to go on out and vote for him and anything like that. And basically all the polls were wrong. The corporate media was telling everybody that their anointed queen, Hillary, was leading Sanders in Michigan by double digits. Did not happen. Now, earlier today, I put out some of these joke images that I made about how silly some of the accusations against Donald Trump are getting. And, Donald Trump shot down the Hindenburg, Donald Trump building his own Death Star, it's got the T logo on it and everything. And one of them was Donald Trump personally nailed Jesus to the cross. So imagine my surprise to find out down in New Zealand, there was a newspaper that actually ran an editorial cartoon featuring Donald Trump holding a hammer in front of Jesus on the cross, and the figure of Trump is saying, I don't like losers. So either they're reading my website, or, well, I don't know, but I mean, that's how desperate they're getting. What started as a joke, they actually used. Now, over at Vice News, contributing editor and left-wing activist Molly Crabapple has become the latest public figure to joke about wanting to see Donald Trump assassinated. Oh, isn't it fun? You know, we're gonna knock him off, and it's just a big joke here. It's amazing. Now, Megyn Kelly has apparently done an about-face. And she's apparently decided that actually she likes Donald Trump. Now, remember that first debate, Megyn Kelly went after Trump over, your attitude toward women, and Trump turned the tables on her with a joke about Rosie O'Donnell. And Megyn Kelly was sitting there fuming. But apparently in one of Trump's recent victory speeches, he gave Megyn Kelly a shout-out. And now today, she seems to be on board the Trump bandwagon, and basically saying that Trump's unscripted campaign is a breath of fresh air. And she's absolutely right. That's one of the reasons people are warming to Donald Trump. He just gets up there and he talks. He's not using a teleprompter. He's not following a script. He thinks on his feet. He's a very, very bright man. And he's won over Megyn Kelly. Now, interestingly enough, there was a story that came out of the Washington Times about how Mitt Romney won't rule out accepting the GOP nomination at a contested brokered convention. And Mitt Romney was saying, no, I wouldn't rule that out. I would accept the nomination. I can't imagine that ever happening, is what he said, which of course is why Romney has filed the paperwork to be a candidate for president in 2016. And the GOP leadership is apparently so terrified of Donald Trump, they're going to hand Hillary the Clinton White House. If the GOP doesn't stop the infighting and rally around their strongest candidate, then Hillary's going to be president. That's where it's going to be. So, for all of you out there who support Donald Trump, you need to get out there and talk to people, and you need to give him a huge enough margin in the remaining primary states that he can block a brokered convention. It's not enough just to have him win by a small margin. He needs a landslide. And GOP voters need to send a message to the GOP's so-called leadership that ousting Trump and putting in Romney, who, by the way, hasn't won a single vote by the people yet this year, that this will be the end of the Republican Party itself and their cushy leadership jobs. This could be the end of the two-party duopoly, which I think would be a really, really good thing. But there's a little bit of a wrinkle, because according to the Republican National Committee's own rules, a GOP nominee must have won 8 states before they can even be considered a candidate at the convention. That's their rules. Now, obviously, Romney isn't going to win anything. He's not on the ballot in the remaining primary caucus states. It's too late to get him on there. So far, there's only one GOP candidate who's qualified by winning more than 8 states, and that's Donald Trump. Of course, the attitude of the Republican National Committee is probably going to be, rules, we don't need no stinking rules, and they could basically, on the very first day of the convention, vote to change the rules and say, yes, we'll just pick anybody that we want to put out there just so long as we don't get Donald Trump here. And they could do that, which may be why the city of Cleveland is arming up, preparing for major riots. They're saying that this GOP convention could be as violent as the Democratic convention in 1968, which made the history books for the violence and protesters and police repression. All right, so we're going to go ahead and grab a couple of quick phone calls. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Yeah, this might look funny to people, but, I mean, this is messing with the Anglo-American Empire, and it's not funny, and Trump should have a food taster, because they're going to set up all these firewalls, like Roger Stone said. Jeb Bush is meeting with all the, everybody but Trump, and Barbara Bush is calling around, and they're setting up all these firewalls, and in the case he gets in, there's no way they're going to let him run the country. There's no way. They'll kill him, you know?
Yeah, I'm afraid that you're right. They're going to try. And I'm sure that Donald Trump has a food taster. I mean, he's got the United States Secret Service Protective Detail, and inside that he's got his own security, who I am sure are the very best that Donald Trump's money can buy, and they know exactly what's going on. We've got all these people kidding about assassinating Donald Trump. We know he's wearing a bulletproof vest. And I'm sure that his food is being obtained from random sources throughout wherever he happens to be staying at the time, so there's no way that anybody can get to it. I'm sure they're taking all the precautions. Okay?
They had that woman on, Cokie Roberts, on MSN. I like to flip through to hear what the BS is, and she's trying to say there's these people at kids basketball games holding up signs, we're going to deport you, and we're going to build a wall, like these kids were holding up signs. And then Trump says, where was that? I mean, these people are liars. Anybody knows Cokie Roberts, look her up, because she comes of a family of crooks. You know, they're just, everybody's out there, like you said, Applebaum or whatever, and that other woman.
Crabapple, yeah. Well, understand, the reason these people in the corporate media are paid these multi-million-dollar salaries is to be convincing liars, to convince you to believe a lie. They're not there to tell you the truth. You know, if the corporate media wanted to tell the truth, they wouldn't need to pay those kind of salaries to people. You know, they can get people willing to tell the truth for minimum wage. You know, it's. I never
seen so many people flip out Hitler all over the place all of a sudden. You know, the ones who say, this, that, it's just Hitler or this or that. It's just bizarre, and if people can't figure out what's going on when both groups are teaming up to go after somebody, the guy to vote for is the guy they're going after.
Oh, people are aware of that. I mean, I make a point of talking to people around here who don't know about the website, they don't know about the radio show, they don't know what it is I do. And yeah, they're all just shaking their heads at what the heck is going on with everybody just piling on to Donald Trump. And they're asking good questions. And we need all of us to be out there to be ready with answers when the people we know say, what do you think is going on with this Trump situation? Well, I'll tell you, the establishment, the money junkies, they're scared of Trump because he can't be bought. He's got his own money, and that's why they absolutely hate him. We have to take a break for commercials. Dustin, thank you for the phone call. We'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show, and the phone lines are filling up here again. We're going to take a call from Jeff in Canada. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Great show as always. I wanted to point out one reason the GOP establishment fears Trump so much that doesn't get talked about and you might want to touch on, and that goes back to the Iran-Contra networks and what happened in Benghazi, and that's the dark networks control of the arms sales and the drug sales that we see bubble up in scandals such as the HSBC and Wachovia drug money laundering crises.
Well, there's actually an even simpler reason why Trump is such a threat to the establishment, because they wanted to go into this election where all of the candidates were in favor of war with Russia and China so that you, the American people, didn't really have a choice. Whoever you voted for, we were going to wind up in these wars, the U.S. dollar against the ruble and the yuan. So you have, Hillary and Kasich and Cruz and Rubio and everybody saying, war is good, war is good. And all of a sudden you got Donald Trump out there saying, wouldn't it be better if we can just get along? And so all of a sudden the American people have a candidate they can vote for in order to bring this long nightmare of endless wars and, on other countries who've done nothing to us to an end. And that's the real threat, because without a new war to force the rest of the world back to the Bretton Woods Agreement, the U.S. economy is finished. We don't have the manufacturing, we don't have the agriculture. There's nothing to prop up the U.S. economy other than everybody having to borrow U.S. dollars at interest in order to conduct global business. That's why he's a threat.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many levels here, and you're right. One of them is he is a threat to the so-called path to Persia that general talked about in 2003.
Yes.
On Democracy Now, Clark. Yeah. Well, I think we're getting close to Sirhan, Hinckley time. We really got to.
They've already got him up there on the 6th floor of that book depository, with whatever it is they're going to frame him. Yeah, it's a real possibility. Too many people are talking about it. But you know something? Here's what we need to do. We need to keep talking about the fact that we are expecting the establishment to kill Donald Trump, to send a message that we're not going to believe in a new Sirhan or a Lee Harvey Oswald or a James Earl Ray or John Wilkes Booth. We're not going to buy it this time. We're going to know who benefits if Donald Trump gets killed.
Yeah, I invite anybody who plans to attend any rallies or the convention to go look at the documentaries of the 1968 Democratic Convention. I think this time it's going to happen at both conventions.
Could very well. There's a lot of angry people out there. The leadership of both political parties has basically been flipping the bird to their own voters, saying, you're not allowed to pick the candidates. That's our job. We will get the candidates that are pre-approved by Israel and Wall Street and the military-industrial complex, and you will just have to pick one of those.
Well, I want you to be the GOP's Abby Hoffman, Michael. Good luck.
I will do my absolute best here. Thank you very much. We're going to switch over here to Jim in New York. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. How are you? Great show as always.
Thank you.
I wanted to talk about Donald Trump. I saw a rally of his last night in Mississippi.
Yes.
And he was talking about how Christianity has to band together. And if we did, we'd be able to get anything we wanted. We'd be able to lobby for anything that we wanted. He talked about getting rid of that Johnson amendment that forbids the churches and the pastors from talking about politics. I really think that if we did, we could win it hands down.
Well, okay, I have two issues. I have two issues with that. First of all, there is, going all the way back to that First Amendment, there is a wall between church and state. We're not a Christian nation. We're not a Muslim nation. We're not a Jewish nation. We are a secular nation. Religion has its place. Now, the comment about Christians coming together was part of a larger message that Donald Trump keeps repeating, that we all need to pull together as an entire nation and stop letting ourselves be divided by all these divide and conquer tactics we're seeing coming out of the current government, whether it's black against white, men against women, young against the old, and the rest of it. So I'm definitely on board the message of uniting the American people as a single American people, and that we can do amazing things with it. But again, we do have to maintain that separation of church and state, because history has shown that when any one religion seizes civil authority, the first thing they do is they crush all other religions. And I don't think any of us want to go through that.
The divide and conquer concept is very strong with the establishment.
Yes, it is. That's how they keep us under control. I mean, they were playing it all during the 1960s with COINTELPRO. They're doing it again with Trayvon Martin and Baltimore, and they're trying to stir up race.
Trying.
Yeah, they're trying to stir up race hate between the blacks and the whites.
Always.
And this time they're not getting the traction. Because because we recognize that's what the government is doing, is trying to turn us against each other, so we cannot unite against the real enemy of the people.
It might be time for a third party. I think the country's ripe for it.
We're overdue. We are overdue. The two existing parties need to be destroyed, and we need to go back to a system where there are strict limits on campaign contributions, and anybody can form a party, and we need to go back to the system that works for the people. We lost that. We're deep into hardcore fascism right now. Anyway, listen, got a lot of things to get to. I got another call I want to take to from Paul in Missouri. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, two things, old buddy. That WRH at WhatReallyHappened.com, what have you. Damien keeps sending it back to me. Is there another
Who keeps sending it back to you?
Damien, the email guy.
The email guy. Okay, well, WRH at WhatReallyHappened.com is the correct address to reach me through the website, and I prefer not to give out any of my other private email addresses on the air. So, just give it another try and see if you can get through, okay?
Okay, and the second thing is, I have it from a very reliable source that Donald J. Trump is the love child of Amelia Marcus and Jim Nabors. Have you heard anything about that?
That goes up there with, Donald Trump is the reincarnation of Hitler, and Donald Trump's real father is Darth Vader. So thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Now, a lot of people are talking today about the stunning upset in Michigan where Bernie Sanders beat Hillary Clinton, and I'm getting all kinds of email from Hillary supporters saying, well, Hillary's still ahead in the delegates. You got to talk about that. She's winning on the delegate count. Yes, she is, and she's got the superdelegates locked up. The problem is that the corporate media and all the pre-Michigan polls were all saying Hillary Clinton was going to beat Bernie Sanders handily, and it didn't happen. And it tells you the polls are not an accurate measure of what people are thinking. They're being ginned up to try and convince you to go along with what you're told is the crowd and vote for the establishment candidate, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Blah, blah, blah. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, we're starting to see articles popping up all over the place just excoriating the Democratic leadership over the tactics that they are using to try and cram Hillary Clinton down our throats and up our nostrils. Article over at Liberty Blitzkrieg. DNC head threatens to kick Michigan mayor out of debate for cheering Bernie Sanders. How dare you cheer for the candidate you want? You're supposed to cheer for the candidates we have declared. Another article coming out of theburningplatform.com, Winning the Hillary Way. And it's just basically talking about how well Bernie Sanders is doing. And yes, he's in second place. But he's this dyed-in-the-red socialist. He's Jewish, which is working against him with certain segments of our society. And he's still closing in on Hillary Clinton when she's got all the support of the establishment, the corporate media, and more money than the Vatican. Not that the Vatican has as much as they used to with all these child molestation lawsuits and everything. But they're trying to push. Hillary Clinton is the establishment candidate. That's it. And the establishment going to fall down, go boom. Now, the latest ABC poll says that Bernie Sanders has narrowed Clinton's lead to single digits nationally. He's closing in on her. Now, interestingly enough, Megyn Kelly, remember I said before that she seems to be warming up to Donald Trump. She was interviewing Debbie Wasserman Schultz on Fox News and forced Schultz to admit that Hillary is facing felony indictments over the emails. And of course, there's serious concern that there's a felony indictment coming because of the immunity offered to the staffer who set up her private server. Now, the Department of Justice doesn't hand out immunity for no reason. A crime was committed somewhere. Now, whether Loretta Lynch will do anything with it or not is very much up in the air. Obama's not running again. Does he want to go down in the history books as a president who covered up for a Secretary of State who was committing espionage? And the Hillary scandals keep piling on up. there was this tech company, Qualcomm, paid Hillary Clinton $335,000 for a single speech. It's just been hit with a Securities Exchange Commission bribery suit. Basically, they settled $7.5 million for violating the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act by hiring unqualified relatives of Chinese officials. And remember, some American lost his job to make that position available, and providing these Chinese officials with luxury gifts that had no valid business purpose. There was also a lawsuit filed by Qualcomm. So this comes under the heading of birds of a feather do flock together. Questions are being raised over a governor of the Federal Reserve donating money to Hillary Clinton. The Federal Reserve's official position is they're apolitical, they don't take sides. Yeah, now they do. Story coming out of craigmurray.org over in Great Britain. Tel Aviv pins their hopes on Clinton. Israel wants Hillary Clinton. And that sort of settles this issue about whether, Israel wants Donald Trump. No, they're going after him. Abe Foxman over at the Anti-Defamation League, he's leading the charge to say, every time people raise their hands, in the crowd for Donald Trump, it's a Nazi salute. It's a Nazi salute. Nazi, 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 Nazi. They're making a talking doll of Abe Foxman, by the way. Pull a little string and it talks. Unfortunately, it only says one thing over and over again. You're an anti-Semite, you're an anti-Semite, you're an anti-Semite, you're an anti-Semite. Now, people are looking at the email dumps, and a lot of people are looking for classified information, but there's other stuff in there that is important to be aware of, even if it isn't classified. At the same time Hillary Clinton was promising voters she was going to oppose free trade deals, her State Department emails show that Clinton was lobbying in favor of those deals at the same time. That right there tells you whatever she is telling the people, whatever she's telling the voters is an absolute lie. All right, we got full phone lines here. Real quick, Brian in Georgia. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I was just, following all the accusations that, Donald Trump is the reincarnation of Hitler. I just hope that a lot of his supporters, of which I'm one, every time some Beltway pundit or even a GOP or DNC establishment figure compares him to Adolf Hitler, all those tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people waiting in line to hear a speech by Donald Trump, they ought to be sure to understand that that's exactly what the establishment thinks of them too, not just Donald. Yeah,
that's a very good point to make. And we've heard the establishment, smearing Donald Trump supporters. Oh, you're all racist. You're all this. You're all that. No, we're not. We're Americans fighting to get our country back. That's what we are. But you make a very, very good point. When they say that Trump is this and Trump is that, by extension, those attacks are being leveled at Trump supporters and the people who are going to vote for Trump. It's a very good point you made, okay?
Yeah.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Glenn in Pennsylvania. Aloha, Glenn. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. It's not Damien. It's Daemon. Mailer demon.
Okay. Oh, okay, well, just make sure that you're spelling the domain correctly because it is a long domain, and in hindsight, I should have.
It's not me. It's for the other guy. It could be his ISP. It's the mailer demon, but it might not be on his end. It's the ISP. Maybe they have you blocked or something.
Well, it could be. We're under constant hacker attack. I've had to fend off 3 of them just this morning alone. So thanks a lot. We'll pass that information along, and we're going to switch over to Nate in North Carolina. Aloha, Nate. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I just got a Bex alert about the latest poll. Clinton would easily beat Trump.
In her dreams. Okay?
Yeah,
Donald Trump is the one person Hillary can't beat. That's why she's working so hard to destroy him so she can run against somebody that she can roll over. She's replaying Richard Nixon's strategy for his reelection. Sabotage the opposing candidates who could be a threat to her so that she gets to run against somebody that she knows she can beat.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me ask you about this real quick. What do you think about this bizarre thing about the what's his name, Odom, Kyle Odom, shooting suspect of the pastor there. Secret Service says suspect in shooting of Ted Cruz-connected pastor was arrested at the White House.
Yeah, and according to the reports, the shooter was saying that the pastor he shot was a Martian. So I would say probably way too many prescription antidepressants.
All right, I didn't know if you'd covered that or not, or if you had that waiting in the wings.
Well, we were going to mention it later on, but yeah, that was the last report. The Secret Service says the shooter is saying that the pastor he shot was really a Martian.
Yep, probably prescription related.
Or there's something else entirely happened, and they're just making up this story to make us, forget about it and go someplace else. Anyway, we're running out of time here. Real quick, Steve in Florida, what's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, I'm wondering in this cashless society, how are we going to pay for our CIA drugs?
Well, that's why the CIA is definitely going to be opposed to a cash-free society, because without being able to sell drugs, they'll have to go to Congress for all their money, and then Congress will have the right to say, no, we don't want you going in and doing all this dirty stuff in other countries and causing problems. Plus, I mean, what are congressmen going to stick in the G-strings of the strippers if they ban cash? I mean, come on, let's just be practical about this.
Right, but I'll tell you, Mike, every day this time, I just thank God you got thrown out of Hollywood, because you're doing so much more for us.
Well, I'm kind of where I am. I mean, I could have done without the last 22 years. But thank you for the kind words. We got to let you go and take a break for commercials. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, as you know, one of the recent debates was in the city of Flint, Michigan. And not too surprisingly, the issue's being politicized. And the Democrats are out there just saying this is all the fault of the Republican Governor Rick Snyder. See, it's the Republicans are saying, let you drink sludge. We Democrats would never do anything like that. Well, yeah, they have been. Okay? Because a lot of the people who were part of this process of saving a few dollars and allowing the citizens of Flint, Michigan to drink toxic water that permanently damaged their children's brains included a lot of state and local Democrats, including the state treasurer, the mayor, and that emergency manager who just unilaterally made this decision. The city council has a large population of Democrats. And they're not mentioning the fact that Obama's Environmental Protection Agency knowingly concealed the fact that the city was not treating the water supply with anti-corrosive agents, and that lead levels in the water had made it toxic. Now, Hillary is out there saying, we're going to provide clean drinking water for Flint. Remember what I said about the email that came out, that while she was telling the voters, I'm opposed to free trade deals, she was actually lobbying for them as Secretary of State. And so there's another scandal coming out of her past involving a chemical called MTBE. Now, MTBE is an oxygenate chemical. Oil companies once claimed it made gasoline burn cleaner and more efficiently, and it was used as a substitute when lead was banned from gasoline. But MTBE is highly toxic. It's not used in gas any longer. Once it's in the soil, it breaks down very slowly and it accelerates the spread of other contaminants in gasoline, such as benzene, which is a known carcinogen. In 2005, Washington, D.C. lawmakers proposed a national ban on MTBE, following the lead of 21 states who'd already banned it inside their borders. Hillary Clinton voted against banning MTBE. And she was in the middle of a re-election campaign, and she got more than $74,000 from the oil and gas industry. So that's something else you need to remember about Hillary Clinton. She ought to change her last name to AFAB. Hillary AFAB stands for anything for a buck. Now, there's a new video. We put it up on WhatReallyHappened.com, and it's called The Clinton Body Count Conspiracy. And it starts out like it's trying to talk about the Clinton body count, but as you get into it, it's a very subtle piece of propaganda where they're trying to say, well, this could all be the work of Richard Mellon Scaife, and, they're just trying to smear a popular president, and really, there's no real proof for any of this, and the video is, to put it politely, inaccurate. It makes quite a few mistakes. in particular with regards to Vince Foster and the so-called suicide note. There's a line on the bottom of the note. The public will never believe the innocence of the Clintons or their staffs, and the video says it's in Vince Foster's hand. No, it is not. There are two different hands on that note. The center section is Vince Foster's writing. It looks like it was the outline for the resignation letter he was preparing to give to Bill Clinton the day following the day that he was suicided and dropped in Fort Marcy Park. But the part at the top and the part at the bottom is a different hand. Graphologists have confirmed it. So they go after Hugh Sprunt in this video. They even mention my website very briefly. And they're trying to basically undermine that Clinton dead body list because apparently it's having an effect on Hillary's chances for the White House. And, of course, they want to discredit the Clinton dead bodies list before Donald Trump becomes its newest entry. Now, we mentioned this before. Ted Cruz has asked Neil Bush to join his national finance team. Neil Bush is known more than just being the brother of Jeb and W. He was at the heart of the savings and loan crisis, in particular an institution called the Silverado Savings and Loan. And Cruz seems to think this is a perfect resume for his national finance team. Now, over at Debbie Kidd's website, she has an article, was picked up also by Jeff Rentz. Will Trump's attorneys go after Cruz, who is clearly ineligible? And Debbie Kidd is going on out there saying, why isn't Trump suing? Trump has standing to sue, and yes, he does. But here's the situation. It's all a matter of timing. If Trump were to sue Cruz and get a court ruling that Cruz is ineligible to be president because he's not natural born, in fact, it's now looking like he was an illegal immigrant for the first 12 years he was in this country, then the GOP can push Rubio forward for the remaining primaries and caucuses. If Trump is smart, and I think this is what he's going to do, he's going to wait until after all the primaries and caucuses are over, when it is just Trump and Cruz, then he's going to sue Cruz over eligibility. And then he's going to woo Cruz's delegates, so will the GOP leadership. They're going to say, oh, you've got to go over to Rubio, we've got to do this. Try and get into a brokered convention or an assassination to take the nomination away from Trump, either of which could easily trigger a mass uprising, and I'm not the only person thinking this. When you look at the way Cleveland is arming itself and buying millions in new riot gear, they're expecting there to be a serious upset. Carly Fiorina has come on out endorsing Ted Cruz, and she may be thinking that if Cruz were able to win, she would get to be the vice president. And again, whoever the GOP nominee is, if they pick a female vice president, it's going to yank the vagina vote right out from under Hillary Clinton. But Carly's apparently unaware that Ted Cruz, under the Constitution, is ineligible to hold the office of President of the United States. Now, turning to the war zones, the Pentagon has decided that they want to give the train and equip program for the so-called moderate Syrian rebels another try. Because it was such a dismal failure before, let's do it again. The odds are in our favor. Sooner or later, it's got to work on out for us. Remember the definition of insanity? Repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome? That's exactly where they are. Now, the Syrian Kurds are saying that the U.S.-backed rebels, terrorists, whatever you want to call them, are using phosphorus in chemical weapons attacks in Aleppo. Not too surprising. Now, the Pentagon is now coming on out and saying it's time to go back into Libya because the U.S. proxy, Saudi Arabia, isn't able to reconquer Libya and force them to accept a U.S. puppet government. The so-called internationally recognized government, created by the U.S. and its allies, at one point they were living on a car carrier in the harbor. They're not the government the people of Libya want. And under the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the people of Libya have a right to choose their own government, not have one imposed from outside. But that's never stopped the United States of America. So the Pentagon is out there with a plan that they think just 30 to 40 airstrikes would cripple ISIS in Libya, which is, of course, pretty much the same thing they said going into Syria. Because they're not really bombing ISIS in Syria, and they're not really going to bomb ISIS in Libya. ISIS is the excuse to go in and bomb Libya's critical infrastructure and bomb the country into rubble until they see things our way. Mahi dictum est. Up in Ukraine, there is a motion being put before the Rada to sever all diplomatic ties with Russia. This is going to escalate the situation and leave unresolved that huge debt Ukraine owes to Russia for natural gas. If they cut diplomatic relations, the first thing that's going to happen is Russia is going to shut that valve on their end of the pipeline. Now, the Pentagon is on the warpath regarding the Open Skies Treaty, supposedly because of the Russian threat. And the Open Skies Treaty is basically saying that up in orbit, your satellites can go anywhere. This goes back to Eisenhower. And the Pentagon is now saying it's time to get rid of that treaty. Well, it shows how little they really know about it, because orbital mechanics preclude spacecraft respecting borders on the ground. If the U.S. forbids Russia from having satellites pass over the U.S., it means the Russians can't have satellites at all other than right over the equator. And if a nation on the equator says nobody's allowed to pass their satellites over our territory, then space comes to an end. Spaceflight comes to an end. It's unworkable. It's just another way to go on out there and say, Russia's a threat, Russia is evil, Russia is tearing the tags off couch cushions, Russia is leaving the seat up on the toilet, Russia is causing global warming. And the latest one, Russia is using the refugee crisis to destroy Europe. It's absurd. We'll be back after the news and commercials. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. We're going to get a quick phone call here from Matthias. Aloha. What's on your mind today?
Regarding El Chapo?
Yes.
It seems like a plot line out of a movie, and I question if El Chapo is being set up, either with or without his knowledge, to be used as establishment plausible deniability for a Trump execution.
It's certainly possible. This El Chapo just seems to walk in and out of prisons, and apparently he's visited his daughter in California, at which point normally her home would be forfeit under the civil forfeiture laws for harboring the criminal. It's entirely possible. They're going to have to set somebody up who's a believable patsy, if they're actually going to try and take Donald Trump out, violently. As that other caller mentioned, they may try and arrange some kind of an accident. There was not too long ago, Trump's airplane had mechanical difficulties. Or they could try and get something into his food, and oh my goodness, he died of a horrible, unknown, undetected, undiagnosed disease. Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, and everything they accuse Trump of, they're already doing. Oh, he's going to ruin the economy. He's going to build a FEMA camp.
Yeah, that's it's the pot calling the kettle black. It's projection. But again, as you heard on the news break, I mean, do you really expect the establishment candidates who are running for office are going to reform a corrupted system? Of course not. It has to be reformed from outside. Trump is an outsider. He's our last chance at a peaceful revolution to bring control of this nation back to we the people as it was supposed to be, and wrest it away from the big money people, corporations, and certainly from Israel.
Totally.
Okay.
And just the last thing, commenting on what you just said earlier in the program about the $7 million bribery lawsuit settlement.
Yes.
Isn't that funny? Okay, so they paid $7 million bribe to make the problem go away.
Yes. And it was a tiny fraction of what they made. Now, to be very honest, over in China, bribery and gifts to corporate executives is kind of sort of accepted behavior over there. Although they did go after Sheldon Adelson for bribing some Chinese government officials. But they're a little more tolerant of that over there, and in some cases it's expected. So Qualcomm was probably in a little bit of a corner. But again, they got sued by their own stockholders for doing funny things with the accounting. And so, like any other corporation, they're behaving as a corporation. And the fact that they paid $335,000 to Hillary Clinton for a single speech tells us, birds of a feather flock together. The corrupt always support the corrupt. Okay?
I agree totally.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Last thing said of Trump, someone said of Trump, quote, he knows what money is, where it comes from, and how to make more of it, rather than redistributing other people's in exchange for their vote. Thanks, Mike. Have a good day.
All right, that's a very good point as well. And again, all of these candidates who are running for office, for the most part, are career politicians who don't know anything. I mean, I grant you, Ben Carson was a medical doctor, and I think he was trying to replay Ron Paul's successful campaign, but he kind of shot himself down. But, you know, Donald Trump has built things. He's started companies. He's had some failures, but he's had a lot more successes. And he's closer to the founding fathers than any of the other candidates in regards of having his own money, running his own business, and government office is just a part-time honorary position. It's not the end-all and be-all of his ambitions. All right, getting on back to the wars. As you know, Iran test-fired a ballistic missile, and everybody's in an uproar. Oh, Iran is in violation of this, Iran is... The U.S. State Department has basically come on out and said that actually testing a ballistic missile is outside the scope of the P5+1 nuclear agreement. There was nothing in there about conventional weapons tests, even though Israel tried to get it thrown in there at the last minute. So the State Department is saying it's not a breach of the deal. However, that did not stop President Barack Obama from this day issuing a notice of the continuation of the national emergency with respect to Iran. They want their war with Iran any way they can get it, as long as you pay for it and your children die in it. Rattling the sabers even further, the U.S. has deployed 3 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers to the Asia-Pacific region to sort of wag at North Korea and, by proxy, China. The U.S. is currently in talks with Australia to base long-range bombers down there as well, with which to threaten China. That's the ultimate goal. War with Russia, war with China, war between the dollar and the ruble and the yuan. That's what's driving all of this. Because the United States has allowed its manufacturing to decline in quantity and quality, and nobody wants our GMO agriculture. And without the rest of the world being forced to conduct all their trade in U.S. dollars borrowed at interest, there's nothing left to support the U.S. economy, and that's why they're in a rush. Now, as we mentioned before, for the Academy Awards, in the little goodie bag that all the nominees get, and it's a huge amount of stuff that's being put in there, was a certificate for a free trip to Israel for all the nominees to go on over to Israel, worth about $50,000. You know, luxury accommodations and everything, and plenty of photo opportunities for the leadership of Israel to be photographed with these celebrities, to use their star power to try and polish up Israel's brand. And it caused a huge amount of controversy. And in the Los Angeles Times, there was a full-page ad calling on the Oscar nominees to not go to Israel and not let themselves be used by the government of Israel. Now, Variety magazine, which is a film trade journal, refused the ad. They didn't want to. We can't annoy Israel. Oh. But the LA Times allowed the ad to run, and basically saying that any of the Oscar nominees who go on this trip, they are accessories to Israel's war crimes, and they are if they let their celebrity be used for propaganda purposes. Now, we're getting more booga-booga waved at us again. Admiral Rogers, the National Security Agency chief, is out there giving a speech saying that there's a black energy attack on the U.S. power grid. The lights are going to go out. It's not a matter of when, it's if. We know it's coming. Blah, blah, blah. Be afraid. Be very afraid. Cling to the government to keep you safe. Well, we have battery backup. Emergency generators here. Here's the point. Isn't it the NSA's job to prevent such an attack? Isn't that why we were told we had to surrender our privacy and allow the government to constantly peek into our personal lives to prevent such an attack? Well, let's hold them to the word. If there is such an attack, if there's a massive blackout, or if there's an attack on the Internet, it means the NSA has failed. It means the CIA has failed. It means the FBI has failed. So when that attack happens, Admiral Rogers should resign or be fired and given a thick coat of tar and feathers and run out of town on a rail. Now, not too long ago, we wrote an article at WhatReallyHappened.com called The Virtual 9/11. And the central thesis of that is that the U.S. government, aided by Israel, would bring down the U.S. banking system computers and frame some other target of invasion for it. Iran, Syria, Russia, China. And maybe Rogers is trying to set the stage so that when all of our computers stop talking to each other, they can say, oh, see, we told you it was coming, and it's the people over there that we've been wanting to invade for all this time. We'll be right back after these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to take a quick phone call. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mark, are you there? Hello, Mark. I cannot hear you. Oh, wait a minute. Let me push this button. Mark, are you there?
Oh,
yeah.
I'm here.
Okay, that one was my fault. I hit the wrong button. Too many buttons. Loosen that on the keyboard. Mechanical failure. What's on your mind?
All right. I'm just wondering, they're talking about all this activity with Iran, with Russia and this and that. How does the Pentagon expect to win a war, even against Iran, let alone Russia, even to invade Iran the way we did Iraq, when you have, first of all, soldiers being taught about white privilege? Second of all, they're lowering the standards now, bringing in recruits that are overweight and giving them more and more chances to get into the military. So obviously, what's coming in is definitely not best qualified anymore. And on top of that, they're being demoralized. And then what's going on with the veterans? How do you expect a demoralized military like that to defeat? You ever see the Russians on the internet? Sometimes I go to YouTube.
I watched one episode of that. It was just obviously propaganda against the Russians, like the last Indiana Jones movie, and I tuned it out. But the real problem is, we've been at war on all these countries longer than we were in World War I and World War II, and our stockpiles are drawn down. We've reached the point where apparently there's a big stink in Congress because the Navy SEALs don't have enough weapons. They're running out of guns over there. And we don't have the money, we don't have the manufacturing, we don't have the manpower, and we certainly do not have the moral authority to move forward with more wars. And again, going on back to Sun Tzu and the art of war. For a leader to be successful in a war, he's got to have a military that believes in the moral rightness of the war so that they will fight and, if necessary, die. And the leader has to have a civil population that believes in the moral rightness of the war so that they will bear the burdens that war brings, even to the victorious side. And our government has neither one of those. And anybody still moving forward thinking that the U.S. is going to win this war, they're delusional. They're watching too many sales presentations by the defense contractors. We're going to lose this one. But, for the bankers who are behind all these things, they don't care one way or the other. They love war, they make huge amounts of debt off of war, and they don't care which side wins or loses.
But when I talk about Russia, their military, I'm not talking about our propaganda. I'm talking about going on YouTube and getting RT and Sputnik News and seeing we're talking about an excellent military, excellent weapons systems, excellent airplanes.
Yes.
And very well-disciplined, motivated soldiers. So, do they actually think we could defeat an army like that, even conventionally, let alone, God forbid, nuclear? God forbid any kind
apparently
of war.
They're convinced, but, again, they're at a point right now where they have to move forward with the war agenda. To turn around and abandon it now is to immediately collapse the U.S. economy and open up our leaders for war crimes trials in The Hague. So But
they would also have to bring in a draft. Do they think the 18-year-olds of today are going to go with that? Not only can they vote, they can riot too, and they probably would riot and refuse to go. Are these? I know they're crazy, but are they that? Crazy?
Yeah, they are that crazy, and they're going to hold off the draft until after the election is over in November, and then they're going to say we have to have a draft to fight the evil Russians and the evil Chinese, and there's going to be mass uprising in this country. Because the American people don't believe what the government is saying about Russia or China or Iran or anything anymore. They've got to...
Absolutely not. Yeah, I see the comments on the internet and all that. Nobody believes this government anymore, or mainstream media. Only the fools that watch stuff, things like Fox News, and most of those are like, people way up there in age that believe anything that Fox tells them.
Well, look at the recruitment numbers. I mean, there's, the military has a huge, well-funded advertising campaign. It's all over TV. Join the Navy, the global force for good, or America's Army, or whatever. And they're not getting people showing up because, the young kids understand war is, messy, dirty business. You could get killed. And they don't see a reason to. They don't see that the U.S. has been wrong, that the U.S. has a moral authority to go on out and project power. They just see these wars as making money for the money junkies and the defense contractors, and they don't want to be killed and crippled over that. And even the economic hardship, is not driving more people into the recruitment. And I remember a couple of years ago, my wife and I, we were down. There was at the local shopping center, there was a restaurant we used to go to. It was a Denny's, went out of business, which tells you how bad the economy is. And there was a recruiting station right next to it. And we saw a bunch of young kids who had enlisted in the Air Force, and they were waiting for the bus to take them off to wherever they were going to go. And we asked them, why are you enlisting, knowing what's going on? And they said, we can't find any other work. And it's a choice between homelessness and enlisting in the military. So it's a form of economic draft. Has already been in place in this country for quite some time. But even that isn't working any longer. And you're absolutely right. Yeah. Without a motivated military and without cost-effective weapons, the U.S. cannot win a conventional war. I mean, look how much trouble
they're ready.
Yeah, they're already in trouble. They're bogged down in Iraq. They're bogged down in Afghanistan. They're having to go back into Libya again, having to go back into Yemen again. This plan is falling apart. But from the point of view of our leaders, they can't stop without seeing the U.S. economy implode and all of them being rounded up and sent to The Hague for war crimes trials. And that's another reason why they're so opposed to Donald Trump, because Trump is going to pull the plug on all this nonsense. And he's going to say, let's bring all of our people back home and let's rebuild our nation and make it great again in the true measure of greatness, which is peace through commerce.
Yeah, and on top of everything else, they're lowering the standards. Like I said, they already said they're lowering the weight standards. Now they want to put women in combat units. Can you believe that? And
when they lower the standards for fighter pilots to 60-year-old guys who are overweight with bad eyes, I'll sign up. Actually, my draft status is 1H. In the event of war, I'm a hostage.
Oh, wow. All right.
Okay.
All right, Mike. Like I said, I'm just wondering what's going on in these people's minds, or what passes for a mind.
They're listening to their close advisors too much. They're listening to the defense contractors too much, and they're stuck. They can't turn around. First of all, there's ego involved. They don't want to admit defeat. And they'll be just like Hitler was. They'll drive the entire nation down into rubble before they admit that they were wrong to be doing what they were doing.
And most of these neocons were actually draft dodgers during the Vietnam War.
Yeah, that's another part of it. They didn't want to have anything to do with war, but for your kids, send them on off. It'll be a character-building experience. All right, we're going to let you go here, Mark. Got another caller waiting on the line. We're going to take your call as soon as we're back from these commercials. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. I love this headline on the We Hate Donald Trump Network, formerly Fox News, the battle for the Democratic nomination. Do these people not understand that Debbie Wasserman Schultz has already corralled all of the superdelegates for Hillary? All right, let's grab some phone calls here. We're going to start with James in Ohio. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. Kudos for mentioning it on your website, and I certainly hope it becomes more well-known by the time the 15th rolls around. But the Ohio Republican Party wants to make absolutely sure that people know who they're voting for. Therefore, they've been working closely with the team that designed those Publishers Clearinghouse mailings in order to, come up with ballots. And unfortunately, in all counties that formerly identified as blue-collar, the instructions were sent out in cuneiform. So.
Okay. That must be a little hard getting those clay tablets into the mailbox slot.
Yeah, that's about all I got for you. But really, we need to make that more well known because people really won't understand who they're voting for, or.
Yeah, well, we talked about it the other day, where apparently on the Ohio primary ballot, there's only one place where you check off for the Democrat, but there are literally two sections for the Republican nominee, and you have to check them both off, and they both have to match, or the vote is simply not counted at all.
Okay, that's how it is then. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch to Mo in Florida. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to kind of suggest an acronym, because you're one of the few people, well, there's a few out there, I know you know who they are, that call out Israel, and I would like to use, the acronym of COI, call out Israel. Tell these congressmen, don't be coy. I know it's spelled C-O-Y, but as an acronym, call out Israel. Don't be coy. And that is a big thing because, they own the media. Nobody hears about it. And you got the guts. You got the guts to call them out. And I know you're not against, the Jewish people and all that. I'm not either. But I mean, this support for this apartheid state and the wars they've gotten us into, the money they've ripped us off from, these are just some bankers, the Zionist bankers that have just, taken over this country. Like you said, these congressmen, they do a pledge. They have to take the pledge when they come into office. It's just so amazing. It's right there in front of your face. But anyways, that's my...
my question would be is, what if you refused? If I'm elected to the Congress of the United States of America and somebody asks me to swear an oath to Israel, I'm going to refuse. That's not what I'm there for. What are they going to do? Kick me out of Congress because I refuse to swear an oath of fealty to Israel? I mean, can you imagine the press conference that's going to follow that one?
No, they're going to have a hard time with you, Michael, because you don't have a car, so you don't have to go out every day and look to see if you got wires dangling.
Well, actually, there's a lot of wires dangling on the car, but that's because it's 15 years old.
They'd have to throw something on your bicycle.
Yeah. All right, well, listen, thanks a lot. We're going to let you go here and get back to the news. Now, interestingly enough, the United States State Department has set up a hotline to report ceasefire violations in Syria. Okay? Apparently, none of the people working on that hotline can speak Arabic, which is the sort of thing you do when you don't really want to receive reports of ceasefire violations over there in Syria. Apparently, there's been another U.S. airstrike, killed 150 people in Somalia, at what is being claimed to be a training camp. Nobody actually knows who got killed, but the U.S. government's pretty certain they were all bad people, and you shouldn't worry about them. Speaking of drones, apparently it has come out that the Pentagon is flying military drones over the United States of America, over your home, over your school, over your place of employment, over you, over your head. Now, the Pentagon is insisting that this is lawful. It complies with whatever laws they're citing, and they're saying that these are all non-military operations for which the drones are being deployed. They're keeping an eye on you. They don't trust you. They're scared of you. They want to make sure you're not building something in your backyard that they should be concerned about. Well, I don't know. Maybe they're looking for somebody who actually knows how to build a working weapon. The F-35, the plane that we all love to hate, $1 trillion project, now it's come out, the F-35's radar doesn't work. Apparently there are software glitches. It's painting up false targets. It's not finding real targets. And the software for the onboard cannon still hasn't been delivered. And because of all the junk that's been added onto the F-35's cannon only carries 3 seconds worth of ammunition. I mean, the thing is becoming an international joke. Story coming out of warisboring.com, the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter is still a huge mess. Now they're saying it's not going to be ready for combat until at least 2022. With all the problems. At the rate we're going, World War III will be over and done with by the time they bring that on. And by the way, that was another strategic mistake Nazi Germany made. They put too much of an emphasis on their high technology wonder weapons, and the technology was amazing, which is why Operation Paperclip tried to grab as much of it as they could, but they couldn't get it into the field effectively in time to beat the end of the war. When they were going across Germany, they were finding all these amazing things that had been built that just hadn't reached the point of being deployed, including an early version of a stealth fighter. It's amazing. Now then, here's an interesting story coming out of Sputnik News, and they're talking about how there's a case in court over revealing the stash of pornography that was found in the house in Abbottabad, where they killed some guy, claimed it was bin Laden, and dumped him in the ocean. And they're saying it's a fairly extensive pornography stockpile, mostly digital videos. I don't know, maybe they're getting bored with the stuff they steal off of our cell phones and everything, and they just want some higher quality pornography. But first of all, we all know that wasn't really Osama bin Laden who was killed in Abbottabad. That's why they had to throw his body in the ocean. The real bin Laden died in December of 2001 of natural causes, and every bin Laden since then has been a fake. Have you noticed how they're always getting younger and healthier looking? With all the videos up until the Abbottabad situation. But let us for a moment stipulate that for once in its career, the government and the corporate media are telling us the truth, and that was bin Laden in Abbottabad, and he had a huge pornography collection. Okay, well, it is a sin in Islam to look at a naked woman other than your wife. So that means that Osama, or whoever it was at Abbottabad, wasn't really a devout Muslim. And doesn't that get the Muslims off the hook for terrorism if the people committing the acts of terror are clearly not practicing Muslims? Something for you to think about a little bit. All right, let's talk about the economy a little bit. The death of paper gold is picking up speed. Apparently, BlackRock has announced issuance of new gold paper contracts, ETF shares, has been suspended, which is about time. I mean, the paper to physical leveraging is a huge number, hundreds to one, and that's not supportable. Let's see. A fresh recession will cause Eurozone collapse, warns the Swiss bank. And they're saying it's time for the EU to act decisively to protect the European economy, which means taking more money away from the ordinary people and giving it to the banks. That's always their solution. Whatever the problem is, take it away from the people, give it to the banks so the banks can loan it back to the people at interest. We'll be right back. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the economy, and it looks like a career with Bitcoin may adversely affect your life expectancy. Autumn Radke, was a 28-year-old American CEO of the Bitcoin exchange firm First Meta, has been found dead in her Singapore apartment on February 28th. Now, the media is saying it's a suicide. Oh, it's tragic suicide. Singapore officials are saying we're not so sure, and we would like to finish up the investigation before we run on out and say it's just a suicide. And there's been a lot of strange deaths going on. Now, we've been commenting about all these holistic doctors and natural doctors, people working with GC Math, people who'd found the Nagales, and they're dying mysteriously. But there's a lot of wet work going on in the banking industry. On February 18th, a 33-year-old J.P. Morgan finance professional supposedly leapt to his death from the roof of the company's 30-story Hong Kong office tower. Gabriel McGee, 39, a vice president with J.P. Morgan's corporate and investment bank technology firm in the UK, supposedly jumped to his death from the roof of the bank's 33-story Canary Wharf Tower in London. That was on January 28th. On February 3rd, Ryan Henry Crane, 37, a J.P. Morgan executive director who worked in New York, was found dead inside his Connecticut home. Very interesting things going on. Now, a little more overt is over in Iran because one of their tycoons has been sentenced to death for corruption. There's an idea whose time has come. No wonder the Wall Street money junkies hate Iran. They hate the example that's being set. If you're corrupt, if you're committing crimes, you should be punished for it. And, of course, the American model is when you're above a certain degree of wealth, the laws don't apply to you. The laws are just for the little people, for you serfs, for you plebes, for you slaves. You must comply with the law. The laws don't touch us. We're above the laws of gods and men, as it were. We all know Monopoly, fun game. It's been a mainstay of the American culture for a lot of years, and as a herald to the cashless society, the newest version of the game is cashless. No more of those paper bills, currency, and all those different colors, which ironically enough match the color scheme of the latest U.S. currency, proving that the Treasury Department does have a sense of humor. But apparently the new Monopoly board game has little electronic counters and barcodes that track your transactions and who's winning and who's losing. And I'm just waiting for somebody to announce that they've hacked that little device so you can cheat at Monopoly. Meanwhile, a watchdog audit from the Government Accountability Office has concluded that billions of dollars have been wasted by the Obamacare fiasco. Part of the problem is that the government was allowing anyone to sign up with no proof of anything, whether they were eligible for the subsidies. And they're saying that there have been billions of dollars made in fraudulent payments to people who are scamming the system. And it's easy to scam. The website has never worked. They never got it to work perfectly. They're just shoveling stuff through so they can say, we've got people to sign up. And it's wide open for scamming, and that's exactly what's happening. Guess who's paying for it all? You are. Now, up in Kansas City, as you know, there was a mass shooting, 4 people killed at a home, and then another man about 170 miles away, and they finally arrested the suspect early this morning and discovered, to nobody's surprise, that the guy was an illegal immigrant. And apparently he'd been previously deported from the United States in 2004, and he just walked back in across the borders. Because after all, we're tearing down the barriers. We're opening the borders. We welcome all these illegal immigrants and these refugees to our country here. And don't you dare keep them from voting. That would be racist. Over in Europe, this is being reported in Investment Watch blog, they had this sports center that was set up to house 1,000 refugees. They finally got the refugees out and discovered the refugees had left behind 4 million euros worth of damage. They just trashed the place. Macedonia is finally waking up. They have completely closed their border to all illegal migrants. The walls and fences are up. If you don't belong there, you don't get to go on in. There's an idea whose time has come. We need the same thing here. Story coming out of Blacklisted News. Apparently, the U.S. government has gone out to Hollywood to try and recruit as many filmmakers, producers, directors, writers, whatever, to just crank out a huge new wave of massive cinematic propaganda. Movies about how evil Russia is, how evil the Iranians are, how evil the Chinese are, how great Americans are, and how what a wonderful thing it is to go on out and be blown to bloody bits for the American flag. And Hollywood has been all too willing to go along with the propaganda. They certainly did during World War II. And those who refuse to go along with the propaganda pay a very heavy price. That's really what was at the heart of that whole McCarthy anti-American blacklisting in Hollywood, because when World War II ended, the bankers said, okay, now we're going to keep on making money by having a Cold War with Russia. And there were people in Hollywood who were, first of all, been very, very tired about pumping out propaganda, and in many cases they never got paid for it. Remember all those cartoons the Disney studio cranked out for the troops about, with Daffy Duck, and Goofy and Mickey Mouse, war propaganda? Disney got stiffed on the bill for that. And so there were a lot of people in Hollywood saying, wait a minute, Russia was our ally against the Nazis. Why should we demonize them now? They're our friends. And anybody who refused to start making movies portraying Russia as bad was put on the Hollywood blacklist. A little bit of history there. Most people don't understand. The government has always wanted to co-opt Hollywood for propaganda purposes. J. Edgar Hoover was a total nut for Hollywood. If you ever see the Jimmy Stewart movie, The FBI Story, forget about the director's credit that's on the screen. J. Edgar Hoover was on that set every single day telling the director how to make the movie to make the FBI agents look really, really good. And he actually appears in the movie briefly from the backside only. When Charlie Chaplin refused to change the movies he was making to suit J. Edgar Hoover's agenda, this is before Hoover was even head of the FBI. You know, Hoover got very angry, and later on when he was head of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover was instrumental in getting Chaplin's citizenship revoked and getting Chaplin deported. When Charlie Chaplin came back to get his Lifetime Achievement Award from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, it took a special act of Congress to let him into the country to pick up his award. All right, turning closer to home, new items are developing in the Lavoie Finicum murder. And apparently somebody took the overhead video taken by the government that was released to prove how evil Finicum was, and they synced it up with the cell phone videos taken by people who were actually there and made it inevitably clear the police fired first. And now the Department of Justice is saying, well, we're investigating those FBI agents. There may have been possible misconduct. They lied about how many shots were fired. Nothing will come of it, of course. Because remember, Ruby Ridge and Waco, okay, murdering inconvenient people or wrecking their Hollywood career is what the FBI really does. They're not the swell bunch of Joes you saw in the FBI story or the various TV series about the FBI or Silence of the Lambs. That's not what they're about. So there's new evidence of foul play, and here's where it gets really good. The official autopsy of Lavoie Finicum has been released. We have a PDF scan of the actual autopsy report. Lavoie Finicum was shot 3 times in the back. He was not facing the person who shot him. He was not presenting a threat. He was shot 3 times in the back. Speaking of shootings, up in Chicago, the model of modern gun control law, 21 people got shot over the last 20 hours. 2 people were killed, 19 others wounded, from Tuesday through early Wednesday, averaging somebody being shot every 58 minutes in a city where gun control is the law of the land. And it's a reminder, the more you control guns and take them away from law-abiding citizens, the more the criminals are going to have a field day. But the people pushing for gun control to take your guns away from you, they're not worried about crime. They're worried about you. They're afraid of you. That's what this is all about. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. Now, in May 9th of last year, there was a lady, Tiffany Hupp, 23 years old, and she stepped between a West Virginia state trooper, Seth Cook, who was getting ready to shoot her dog, Buddy, who was chained to a wall at the home. And Tiffany was arrested for obstruction of justice for putting herself in front of the dog to protect it. And the case went to trial. They had a jury. She was acquitted, understandably. But the revealing thing that came on out is that the officer, Seth Cook, testifying about why he was doing what he was doing, said that he had been trained to shoot dogs even if they were chained up. I wonder if this was one of those Israeli security companies that are being hired to train our police. Why shoot a dog that's chained up? Now, for those of you who are dog lovers, you understand that's a member of your family. Fur and forelegs and all. And I can imagine a police officer shooting a dog that's safely on a chain, provoking an armed response. But to be teaching the police officers to shoot a dog that's chained up, what are they thinking? Whatever happened to the idea of de-escalating a situation? Shooting somebody's dog that's chained up is only going to make the situation worse. Now, turning over to the encryption situation and the FBI and Apple, the UN Human Rights Chief is out there saying Apple is right and the FBI is wrong. That if Apple provides this requested software to the FBI. It's just going to allow the FBI to go into anybody's phone anytime they want, even remotely. Clear violation of the Fourth Amendment. Edward Snowden is out there saying, basically, the claim that they couldn't unlock the San Bernardino phone without Apple giving them the special tool is bovine excrement. Now, the FBI is looking worse and worse in this whole situation. The justification to try and get Apple to give them a tool to open this iPhone is that it might contain the identity of a suspect in the San Bernardino shootings. Except we were all told there were only 2 shooters, both of whom are now dead. There wasn't supposed to be a third suspect, as witnesses claimed. Those witnesses were all drunk. They were crazy. They were out of their mind, saying that they were 3 white, tall, athletic-looking men instead of these 2 brown-skinned people that got framed for this thing. And the iPhone in question isn't even a personal phone of the suspects, which was destroyed. It was an employer-supplied iPhone, making the suggestion that it contains personal information of a potentially criminal nature, rather dubious. This is a phishing expedition by the FBI. And they're trying to use it to get tools from Apple to allow them to conduct phishing expeditions on everybody. And part of that may be explained by a story that came out of Blacklisted News, how the FBI has been given new powers to look through NSA intercepts of all of your communications without a warrant. So they can go on out there and say, oh my goodness, look what we've discovered. This person is doing something that we can exercise civil forfeiture and take their property away from them. There's a big stink over at Google because the Google Maps, which are considered authoritative by many in the world, do not show the country of Palestine. And there's a growing movement to put pressure onto Google to say, look, you have to be honest and draw the borders of Israel as they are, and draw the occupied territories as they are, and not try and depict it as already being Israel, which it is not. Now, turning to the wonderful saga of Windows 10, it just gets better and better and better and better. There's a story that came out from TechFrag.com, how Windows 10's latest update may remove programs from your computer without letting you know. And apparently some of the programs that Windows 10 just arbitrarily says you don't need are Specky, CPU-Z, HW Monitor, and CCleaner. CCleaner is very popular. I use that myself. Apparently the Windows 10 update deleted certain hardware drivers like Intel's Rapid Storage Technology and AMD Catalyst Control Center. So Microsoft is literally becoming a cyber tyrant, forcing the operating system on you and then through the operating system deciding for you what software you can have and what software you cannot. I got an email from somebody who works for an IT company, and basically they have racks of all different kinds of computers, all different operating systems, so they can test what they're developing to make sure it will work on all these systems. I understand that. When I worked for the Ohana Learning Foundation, we had an entire room filled with DVD players because the DVD standard was implemented differently by them all, and we had to make sure our master DVD would play on all the machines before we sent it for duplication. And so this guy who wrote me said that they had a whole rack of Windows 7 machines there for testing applications to run on Windows 7, and Microsoft took them all over and updated them to Windows 10. And now they don't have systems to test their Windows 7 software on. Why is Microsoft allowed to get away from this? Now, Apple users have been hit with the first ever Mac ransomware. The Macintosh users seem to think they're immune from these things, and they aren't. But now there's a new ransomware that's hitting Macintosh computers and demanding $400 to unlock your files on the infected computers. And remember, the official FBI response, if you are hit by ransomware, is pay the ransom, because they can't do a thing about it. They're too busy spying on the law-abiding citizens to waste time going after real criminals. Of course, maybe the ransomware is coming from the NSA. Kaspersky Labs says they have evidence that the Equation Group, an international group of hackers, is the NSA. Maybe they launched this ransomware on Macintosh computers as punishment for Apple for not going along with what the FBI wants. When you have a government that's operating as a criminal enterprise, all of a sudden a lot of its behavior becomes very explainable. By the way, if you receive a text message from NatWest Bank, do not click the link. It's fraudsters. And again, the NSA and the FBI can't be bothered going after the computer criminals. They're too busy spying on the law-abiding citizens. Okay, 30 New Jersey schools have been found to have elevated lead levels in their water. 24 schools. The people are crying for safe drinking water, and I say let them drink sludge. That's all they're good for. And there's something that you need to be paying attention to. We are finding out from all over the country, people are getting water testing kits. They're finding out that water in a lot of these cities is toxic. And the government's making speeches, and we will fix it, we will make it all good. Their job all along was to be giving us safe drinking water, not wait until we realize we're not getting safe drinking water and then act all insulted and we'll do something about it. They should have been doing it all along. That's their job, taking care of this country, not Israel, not Libya, not Iran, not Iraq. Stop mucking about with other countries and come and fix this one. Michael Moore is out there saying the Flint residents need a revolution. And it's not just in Flint. This is a problem all across the nation. The government that takes your tax money couldn't be bothered guaranteeing the safety of your tap water. That tells you all you need to know about how they see you. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're getting... I just had an article sent to me by somebody, another evil move by Microsoft. Apparently, in the new Universal Windows Platform Initiative, Microsoft has built a closed platform within a platform into Windows 10 to support gaming. And it appears that Microsoft's goal is to now monopolize the development of PC games and make it wholly their own. Now, games make huge amounts of money. Successful computer games make more money than feature films. They're big business. And Microsoft doesn't want to share any of that revenue with the independent developers like Electronic Arts or Activision or Valve or Epic Games. They're trying to establish a monopoly. And Microsoft has been repeatedly convicted of violating antitrust laws, and at this point they don't seem to care anymore. And I'll tell you what's going to happen. If Microsoft keeps this up, we're all going to just stop dealing with their nonsense. We're going to go open source. We're going to go Linux. Microsoft can't block the development of new operating systems. And people will go to Macs, because Microsoft has just become so heavy-handed, they've become a cyber tyrant, is what's going on here, and it's ridiculous here. Now, out in California, apparently they have shut down the commercial crab season indefinitely. They're claiming that there's some problem of a natural occurring toxin. The real culprit could be radiation from Fukushima starting to accumulate in the fauna along the coast, because crabs are bottom feeders, and they're going to basically be eating from the mud and the dirt that is carrying contaminated particles from Fukushima, or toxins from fracking. That stuff is leaking out. They're actually trying to claim the natural occurring toxin is all the fault of global warming. I remember Deadliest Catch, about the Alaska crab fishermen, and they came here to Hawaii to do their end of the season wrap-up, and one of the members of their crew was a fan of the website and the radio show and invited us just to come on over. And when the cameras were not rolling, all these professional crab fishermen were just living in daily dread of some college kid going on down to the shoreline, grabbing a crab, putting a radiation meter up to it, and then posting the video on YouTube. But remember what Ann Coulter said, a little radiation is actually good for you. Now, getting on to global warming, it's getting a little absurd out there. An article in the New York Post is basically poking fun at a claim being made by the National Science Foundation. Okay, this was $412,000 grant, taxpayer funded, on a scientific paper on the relationship between gender and glaciers. Glaciers, gender, and science. A 10,000-plus word piece of nonsense from University of Oregon professor Mark Carey. And the study urges scientists to take a feminist political ecology and feminist post-colonial approach when studying the melting ice caps and climate change. Hey, it's not really global doom unless it comes loaded up with all the cutting-edge social justice buzzwords. It sounds like what this guy did. Took all the current social justice causes, global warming, feminism, put them in a blender, poured it into a glass, a little rim of salt, and that's what he turned over for his $400,000 grant. Now, do you remember Rajendra Pachauri? He used to be the head of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Now, he himself is not a climate scientist. He is a former railroad engineer, and by that I mean he drove trains. Now, he has a degree in economics on railroads, and for some reason they considered that was adequate for him to become the star of the global warming movement as portrayed by the United Nations. But apparently, he got charged last week with stalking and sexually harassing a woman who worked at the New Delhi environmental think tank that he's been in charge of. And this is not the first time. In fact, Pachauri is now being described as the clown of climate change by the Telegraph over in Great Britain. One of the things people are taking him to task for is that Pachauri portrays himself as a Nobel laureate climate scientist, and he's neither. He's not a climate scientist. He's an economist specializing in the economics of railroads. And his claim to being a Nobel laureate is the fact that when Al Gore got the Nobel Peace Prize for his documentary An Inconvenient Untruth, the prize was shared with the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The group at the UN won the Peace Prize. Pachauri, as head of the group, accepted the prize on behalf of the group, but it wasn't awarded to him personally. But he's out there claiming to be a Nobel laureate. They're all fakers. They're all fakers. Meanwhile, up in Northern California, Mammoth Mountains, to the joy of the ski resort operators, got 8 feet of new snow over this last weekend. This is, of course, March. Apparently, snow is also falling in southern Mexico. Right now, mid-March, 19 degrees north latitude. Southern Mexico, they're getting snow. Which may or may not be the reason why President Obama just gave $500 million of your money to the United Nations Green Fund. We have to fight climate change. No, the money is to sell climate change so they can hit you with a carbon tax. And it's getting to the point of utter ridiculousness. CNN is running a story about how Donald Trump can't dodge global warming any longer without damaging his campaign. It really is absurd, and it's becoming so obvious. I think most Americans really are waking up to just how ridiculous it's become. And they're trapped in a spiral of mendacity because the lies aren't being believed, so they try a bigger lie. And when that isn't believed, they have to try a bigger lie than that, to the point where they're sounding ridiculous. For propaganda to work, it has to be believable. It has to present a coherent alternative reality to be substituted for the real world. And if you don't have that, it's just out there, they're screaming nonsense at each other. Now, Hillary Clinton apparently is calling for new sanctions on Iran because Iran test-fired those ballistic missiles, forgetting, of course, that the United States has been test-firing nuclear-capable ballistic missiles over the last few weeks. But our ballistic missiles are good, and Iran's ballistic missiles are bad. So there you have it. Hillary Clinton is on board with the Let's Make War on Iran agenda. We'll be right back. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show. And apparently my comment about dogs being part of the family hit a nerve. I got a few emails, most of which were basically saying, yeah, the dogs are a part of the family. I got another one saying, oh, dogs are dirty animals. They're scavengers. The whole world realizes they're just pest animals, and only in America do you form this affection for them, which, I don't know, maybe it's a police officer out there who got upset with what I said. But even if it's just the United States of America, here in the United States of America, dogs are part of the family. And people get very attached to them. Go out, look at all those signs up on the street lights, the poles. You know, missing dog reward offered. Police are being trained to shoot dogs even when they're chained up. It's going to escalate the situation. It's going to result in violence against that police officer. Because the owners of the dogs are not going to say it's only a dog. They're going to react on an emotional level. And that's to be expected and predicted, which is why this idea of training the police to shoot the dog even if it's on a chain is so boneheaded. And again, maybe it's just something that's being taught by these Israeli security companies that are teaching the American police to treat the American citizen the way the IDF treats the Palestinians. By the way, survey out of Israel, apparently half the people of Israel are perfectly okay with ethnically cleansing the Arabs out of Israel and the occupied territories. So apparently ethnic cleansing is evil and wrong when it's done to them, but perfectly okay when they do it to somebody else. Which actually is in line with comments that Harry Truman made about the new nation of Israel here. Getting on back to human-caused global warming, a lot more people are coming on out and jumping on the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, which has been caught engaging in an absolute fraud. Now, over the last several weeks, you've been hearing how NOAA came on out and said that this is the hottest year ever. And they put out a press release, and the corporate media picked it up and obediently said, this has been the hottest year ever. Forget all that snow and ice that you're seeing. You're just hallucinating that. You know, if you see snow and ice, the terrorists are going to win. And as it turns out, NOAA cherry-picked the data to claim it's the hottest year on record. Hottest year ever. Their idea of ever, though, was actually very, very small. 37 years. That was the baseline. They began in 1979, and they carried forward and said, see, it's the hottest year on record. But if you go back 58 years, there's been no warming at all, because prior to 1979, we were in a period of cooling. Remember, all the media was saying, there's an ice age coming, get ready for it. That was in the 70s. If you go back to the 1930s, it was a lot warmer then than it is right now. But the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration is following the prime directive of the U.S. government. If at first you don't succeed, lie again. And they got caught at it. Their own data undermines the claim that this is the hottest year ever. They just cherry-picked it to create this illusion, this lie. Story coming on out of Natural News. U.S.-grown GMO corn and soy can't even get into other countries because it is considered unsafe to eat. Not just for humans, even for livestock. And the U.S. got into a heck of a corner. They really made a mistake going along with this GMO agenda because nobody wants our agricultural exports. And as I said before, because Wall Street got lazy on all this wealth coming in from everybody using the U.S. dollar, they've allowed our manufacturing to decline both in quantity and quality. American-made products are junk overpriced, just like our weapons. In fact, the F-35 is a perfect example. All the people in this country who really know how to manufacture have already left for greener shores. Other countries welcomed them in and said, yes, we respect manufacturing. We understand you can't have an economy without making something for sale. As opposed to the U.S. economic system, which believes that if you take a big stack of ink and paper notes and you shake it back and forth hard enough, it'll grow by magic. Now, the FDA has finally admitted that chicken meat that you will get at a restaurant or at the supermarket contains arsenic. Now, it's been known for a while that arsenic is in chicken. It's actually put into the feed that they feed the chicken because, for some reason, it makes the chickens grow faster and plumper on less feed. Saves money. Makes a bigger chicken, more profit. But arsenic is a poison. It's also a carcinogen. And the FDA basically came on out and said, yeah, there's inorganic arsenic in the chicken, but we're going to get Ann Coulter to tell you that a little arsenic is good for you. And again, if there's one job that we demand of the government that takes so much tax money from us, it's to make sure the food we eat is safe and healthy and the water we drink is not harmful. And this government has failed miserably on both those counts because they're constantly pandering to the food corporations, to the pharmaceutical corporations, to everybody that can buy themselves a congressman and get the law suspended so they will sell you toxic food because they make more money. And if you get sick, it's good for the economy because now you have to go to the doctor and you have to get treatments for the cancer that the chicken meat gave you. It's getting hard to actually find anything in this nation that's safe to eat anymore or drink. It's amazing. Now, meanwhile, the large cosmetic corporations are pressuring the FDA to crack down on the homemade artisanal soaps. We have a lot of those here on the island. There's just a little group of people get together. They're making very simple soaps, and they're using the simple ingredients. Meanwhile, the soaps produced by these large corporations have got toxic ingredients in them, but that's okay. We're making money, and they're lobbying the FDA to shut down these small artisan shops making their own soaps. And they're good soaps, too. We have one near here that we buy for Christmas presents and use it ourselves. And it is very good soap. And it doesn't have the toxic ingredients. But see, the goal here is to remove your freedom of choice. If you don't have the freedom to buy safe and healthy products, then you will give your money to the corporations in exchange for whatever toxin-laden, carcinogenic, potentially radioactive crud they feel that you should be made to buy. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a phone call. Bosun in New York, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I just want to say something real quick. You know, the establishment, they're getting very desperate, and I'll tell you why. If they got Saturday Night Live out there putting out propaganda pieces against Trump, man, I tell you, they have no type of tactic left. Now, the piece was pretty funny. They try to connect him to Hitler and all this other crap, but it was just plainly obvious. The comment section was, a whole bunch of people, they didn't really appreciate it too much, and definitely YouTube was definitely fudging the downvotes. But it just goes to show you that this establishment is getting real desperate.
You can smell the panic. You can smell the panic coming out of Wall Street.
Yeah. Have you seen the video? I mean,
no, I don't watch Saturday Night Live anymore.
Me neither.
Yeah, I don't even pay attention to them anymore. It's ridiculous. Okay, listen, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the last segment of our program today here. Going to talk a little bit about Facebook. A few days ago, Facebook raised some eyebrows when they suspended a filmmaker's page after a campaign by anti-fracking activists. And the page was covering a controversial court case. Facebook took it down. They yielded to the pressure. At the same time, they were allowing the Assassinate Donald Trump page to remain. Now, the good news is Facebook has reversed themselves and reinstated the page. Even though they're on the other side of the fracking debate, it's still a First Amendment situation. And Facebook, like Microsoft, is getting very arrogant in their wealth and power. In fact, there's a story here that came out of PatriotRising.com, Zuckerberg and the Facebook Thought Police, and saying that Facebook is no longer a place where you can go and express your view if it contradicts the worldview of the guardians of Facebook, the monitors, whatever they call them over there. Okay, now as you're probably aware, this being the 9th, the asteroid that whizzed by the Earth yesterday didn't hit us. And it was kind of a weird astronomical day. We had a supermoon, we had a solar eclipse, we had the asteroid whizzing on by. Unfortunately, we got clouded over. Okay, Monday, crystal clear skies. Today, crystal clear skies. Yesterday, during the eclipse, solid overcast. It was very, very frustrating. But the asteroid missed us here. Let's see. We're hearing all this weird stuff coming out of the Indian Point nuclear reactor, where they're now saying that, yeah, there's radiation leaking out of it. It's being described as Fukushima's mini-me. And the latest shutdown that happened there, the state-commissioned probe, after months of investigation, is claiming that bird feces piling up on the power lines is the reason the reactor got shut down the last time. Sure. I mean, when you put up power lines, do you not understand birds will be lighting on them? Don't you go out there and brush them off every once in a while? And it's another reminder that our nation's critical infrastructure is in a horrible state of disrepair. And again, if there is one thing we the people demand from the government for all the money they take from us, it's to keep the nation in good working order, to keep the roads repaired, the rails parallel. We had another train derailment up there in California from deteriorated rails. That's the government's real job. The government is the hired caretaker of our national sovereignty and our nation's infrastructure. That's their job. Fancy suits and all, they're basically on the level of janitors. We, the people, select and pay to care for our nation. Keep the bridges in repair. Keep the electricity reliable. Keep the internet reliable. And everywhere we turn, we find our national infrastructure is crumbling into ruin through neglect. Because while they don't want to admit it to you, this nation has been in a wartime economy since 2003. Remember when Hurricane Katrina slammed into New Orleans? There was a shortage of sandbags to try and stop the water coming through those collapsed levees. Why? Well, because somebody had decided they were going to take all those bags and send them to Iraq to use them to build fortifications, along with the Louisiana National Guard, who were not there to deal with the disaster. We've been living in a wartime economy, and the nation is showing the strain. Indian Point nuclear reactor, Whips, Hanford, the Deepwater Horizon disaster, San Onofre. It's all deteriorated to a very, very dangerous situation. Toxic water coming out of faucets all across the country. Government is the most expensive thing you will ever buy. Are you getting value for your dollar? That's something you need to keep in mind, especially as you go to the primaries and the caucuses and finally the general election. Are you getting value for your tax dollars from this establishment? And if you aren't, it's time to get that establishment out. Because the establishment is never going to reform itself. It loves things the way they are. The money is pouring into their pockets. They're getting it from corporations. They're getting it from donors to their nonprofit foundations. And that money is being made by selling you poor quality products less than healthy food, potentially dangerous, and certainly in many cases ineffective vaccines that you're now being forced to buy. It's just a grand machine. It's like a giant meat grinder owned by the corporations and the government into which you are being dropped and ground up, and your money and wealth pours out the other side and into their pockets. The system will not reform itself. The system has worked very, very hard to reduce you to a state of absolute dependency on corporations. You're not allowed to have any alternatives. You're not allowed to grow your own natural food. You're not allowed to grow your own medicines in your backyard. Now they want to take away homemade soap to keep you dependent on the big corporations. We're in exactly the same condition that the American colonists were in under King George III. When King George passed laws to force everybody to conduct their business using banknotes borrowed at interest from the Bank of England, to buy all their cloth and clothing from the knitting mills of Manchester and Leeds, to buy all their other goods from the British East India Company. You weren't allowed to go anywhere else and seek a better deal. No, 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 no. You are a colony. You are our slaves. You will work to give us your wealth. That's where we are. We're back in that same situation. And no, we don't have troops quartered in our homes. They don't need them. They've got the spyware built into your cell phone to keep an eye on you. Your assignment, should you choose to accept it, is to go back and reread the Declaration of Independence, in particular, the list of grievances, and see how much they resonate today. There was a study conducted recently saying 95% of what the American people want isn't even registering in the halls of Congress. They're rigging the elections. They're listening to the rich. They're not listening to you. They're taking your tax money. They're spending it in things you don't want. And they're not spending it on the care of the nation. To me, that's taxation without representation, which I was taught in school was a major reason for the American Revolution. We know that enforced dependency on the Bank of England's currency loaned at interest was another factor. But go back and reread the Declaration of Independence, the list of grievances. See how many of them have parallels in present-day America. All righty, now getting on back to the Zika virus, in case you thought it had gone away, Obama wants to funnel $1.8 billion for vaccine research into the Zika virus, which has been around for a very, very long time. And more it is looking like the Zika virus had nothing to do with the microcephalic babies down in Brazil. That may have been something else entirely, including possibly a mandated Tdap vaccine campaign that was launched. Because these babies started being born with the small heads 10 months after the start of the vaccination campaign, and apparently microcephalic abnormalities are a known potential side effect of the Tdap vaccine. But it makes money, and that makes it okay. So they're going to develop a vaccine and then force you to buy it, because that's life in America. All righty, we got to. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. We will be back tomorrow, Thursday, here on the Genesis Communication Network. Until then, stay informed, stay skeptical, make good choices. Go ahead, if you feel angry, let it out. It's time for everybody to start saying, I'm angry. That wonderful line from Network, I'm mad as heck, and I'm not going to take this anymore. That's your homework. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.